Where was it? What's that? Oh, yeah, it might have been. It might be here. Oh, we've already been making golf cart stops. They're illegal. They can't be on the road. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Are you good to go? If you need a little bit, that's fine. I just making sure, right?
No, let's go.
We're good. And are we streaming and good? All right, the time is 7 PM. We'll call this meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Pulaski?
Here.
Trustee Delapenna?
Here.
Trustee Domke?
Here.
Trustee Forsythe?
Here.
Trustee Lanisa?
Here.
Trustee Prokowski?
Here.
Trustee Trejo?
Here. We have a quorum. We'll move on to presentation of the prepared agendas. Is there a motion to?
So move, David.
Okay. Thank you. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion carries. We'll now move on to village board public comment. Anyone wishing to provide a comment on a topic or an agenda item may address the village board during the public comment and public hearing segments of the village board agenda by submitting comments in advance using the online form or during the meeting. Madam Clerk, do we have any comments submitted in advance?
Yes, we do. The first one is from Chris Wen. Hello, this year's carnival made it impossible to commute for an entire week. It kind of worked out the last 2 years because not as much commuters were going to the city, but now there are way more commuters who need parking spaces available. I know someone who had to drive to the city the entire week because he still needed to show up to the office. Please consider a different location next year or don't host a festival at all. Thank you, Chris N.
And that is something that we're very mindful of. I think one thing that's also a issue with parking congestion is the fact that the parking deck, which will be replacing a number of metro parking spots, is still not open to the public. That should be done by the end of this year, but we're continuing to monitor that. And we've been in discussions with the Lions Club about potential alternative sites for the future, given that we'll also have some 200 to 300 plus new residents living right there adjacent to the site. So thank you.
The next one, I believe they're here in person, the Duns.
Would you like us to read your prepared remarks or do you want to ask the question in person? Sure, absolutely. If you don't mind, just step up to the podium and speak into the microphone. And if you don't mind, just stating your name for the record.
Okay, I'm Sharon Dunn. I live in Roselle. I live on Garden. Goose Lake Park is behind me. I initially submitted a comment regarding the maintenance of the parks because I've noticed that some of the parks are pristine and others are not. Some of the parks have residents that, are adjacent to it, and some of that property is not taken care of. We've had this problem for over 20 some odd years. And every once in a while, when it doesn't get taken care of, we address it. This time they've been out 4 times this season so far. I'm going to say I believe it's the village that has their contractors come out and do it. Now, in speaking to your someone at the village, I didn't get her name. We had a problem recently where the grass has not been cut for 3.5 weeks. Took a yardstick out there because I couldn't use a regular ruler. We worry about, rodents, snakes, those type of critters. And, I submitted this request, and the lady from the village was nice enough to call me. The issue was resolved immediately that day. I said, but we had called prior to that also. So we thought maybe it was time to come in and actually say something about it. Now, I found out that, we were having a problem trying to decide who takes care of it. Park District or the village. I was told that Goose Lake Park is one of two parks that splits responsibility 50-50, the village park. I was told, and I don't know that this is true, and that's why I wanted clarification, that one week the village takes care of cutting it, the next week the Park District takes care. I'm going to tell you that's not true. Because in 25 years, I have never seen that grass cut every week, which means somebody's not doing their job. Okay, so that's where I wanted the clarification. Does it actually get cut every week?
So I'll have to defer to staff, but what I just want to provide some additional details on is, we actually have 4 park districts that are responsible for maintaining parks within the village of Roselle. We have the Roselle Park District, Medina, Schaumburg, as well as Bloomingdale Park District. And so we have a number of different intergovernmental agreements with each of those individuals. And it comes down to even different agreements per park. And so I would say your frustration is a frustration that I have myself. I've been trying to work with at least the Roselle Park District at first. And one thing I've been asking for is let's have a master agreement, because to your point, things get lost when we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 13 different contracts that have different terms and conditions that make it impossible for someone to even do it, let alone enforce it and make sure it's being done correctly. So your frustration, I completely respect and understand on a firsthand basis. I'll defer to Public Works, our Assistant Director, Krista Meals here to kind of discuss what that specific agreement for this specific park. And I just make that apparent to everyone because each park is under different circumstances and it's super convoluted. This is not what government should be. Unfortunately, this is the reality we live in. But Kristen.
Yeah, so the maintenance at Goose Lake Park is shared between the village and the Park District. The village mows it 1 week a month. The Park District mows it 2 weeks a month, twice a month. So it's, as of this year, in the past, it was mowed every other week. Once a month by the village and once a month by the Park District. My understanding is the Park District has increased that to twice a week for mowing.
Twice a month.
Twice a
Twice a
month.
So it should be mowed 3 times a month. So it won't be mowed weekly to your point, but it should be mowed 3 times a month.
And I'm getting a nod of confirmation that I am correct.
Oh, yes, there we go. So, but I think these are things that we all know are frustrating to residents and whatnot. And like, we're doing our best to collaborate together on these and solve them. So, but we appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
I also found out that the village, when the village cuts it, it is contracted out to Uno Mas.
Yes.
That's what I understand.
Mhm.
I understand that we've had this same contractor for many, many, many. I don't know how many exactly,
Yeah.
but many years.
I think their first contract just expired. We just renewed them for a 1-year extension for a flat increase. So
So, one suggestion is they're only going to come out every 2 weeks, and you're telling me that's not true anymore, or shouldn't be. If they could cut a little lower. And my second comment is if they're not doing such a great job, maybe we should find a different contractor.
I think that's something that's on our list actually, is to reevaluate all of our landscaping services next year. And I know it's 2024 and I don't want to even use the P word, but because of the pandemic, I think there's just things we had to prioritize kind of going out to bid on and whatnot. Landscaping was just one where it was easier to keep our existing contractor, but I have concerns about their quality. We've been working on some things about their contract this year and expanding it. So I think that's something that's on the table for us to look at definitely next year. So we'll make note of that for when we go out to bid. So,
Okay, one more comment.
yes,
I understand now we are home rule.
correct.
I would like to know if anything has been done, maybe it hasn't, not that much time has gone by, about what they're going to do. There was a big discussion about immigration
Mhm.
and how they were going to be handling the influx of people into our communities. And I'm wondering if the village has changed anything from what they were planning prior to becoming home rule.
So nothing has occurred on the front of immigration to this extent. To date, Roselle has not had any buses of immigrants dropped off at a train station or any other public location to our knowledge at this point. We continue to work really closely with the county. One thing that we're monitoring is just what happens in Springfield, and that may dictate whether or not we want to take action or not. There was some legislation that was proposed. None of it got passed during this session in Springfield. They just kind of adjourned recently-ish. So that's the one thing that we are monitoring and just keeping our pulse on it. I think I don't want to speak for the entire board at this moment, but I think we're being very eyes open on the situation, but also making sure that we're not we want to react to something instead of doing something too aggressive on the offset, if that makes sense. So, but we're keeping a close eye on the situation.
Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Do we have any other members that submitted public comment?
One, Mike Ostrowski.
If you don't mind, just speak clearly in the microphone and state your name for the record for everyone at home.
Michael P., 300 Heritage Drive. How's everybody doing?
Doing great. How are you?
Good. Just a general concern. We've come across it more than once in the past month or so. There seems to be a lot of golf cart traffic going up on streets at dusk with underage drivers and on cell phones. So they're riding the golf carts on the streets, and I don't want to sound like Gladys Kravitz and be a complainer. And those of you who are laughing know exactly what I'm talking about. But the golf carts are out there. They're hard to see. They don't even have the orange placard on the back. And now we've got motorized bicycles doing the same thing. And last night there was a go-kart with kids traveling on the roads. So just a general concern. I don't want to be the one to injure them, but I think whether we put a letter out in the newsletter or something like that, tell the people, please use your
Yeah.
more than I would have done when I was a kid. But now that I'm older, I get to state my case.
We certainly, I think it's a blessing and a curse. The warmer weather, we see this kind of interesting activities going on in the street. I think this is another example where, because the village's home rule authority, our chief of police has been evaluating other opportunities we have for enforcement on that. So I'll turn over to our police chief to give some more information.
Hello. So golf carts currently, under Illinois law, are considered operation of non-highway vehicles. So we can cite them under Illinois law. We have actually been pulling over people on golf carts. Generally, it is underage people calling their parents. We're also working on, been putting together a village ordinance that we can push out so that we can stop these. We currently have personal use vehicles in our village code, which is those electric scooters that everybody sees also. So those we can cite. So we are working to encompass all of those things at once, but currently they are illegal and we have been stopping them, but with the warmer weather, it has been difficult because they're everywhere. Sure, absolutely.
Very timely as we prepare for the next edition. So is there any other member of the public tonight that wishes to address the board? Let the record show none. Then we'll move on to officials and staff reports. Under my report, I have a couple of things. I just want to first thank trustees Domke, Delapenna, and Pierakowski for joining me at the DuPage Managers and Mayors Conference dinner and award banquet a couple of weeks ago. So it was a great event in Elmhurst. And I'm very happy to be representing the village as vice president of that organization going forward. So I'm the fourth mayor to be able to step into leadership on that group. So after Mayor Devlin, Mayor Birdsall, Mayor Smolinski. And so I appreciate the opportunity to kind of work with my peers on more regional strategies for all of our communities to benefit from. I'm also excited to be going with the Roselle Sister Cities on a diplomatic tour of Bochnia, Poland, starting tomorrow. So disclosure, no village expenses were incurred for this. This is all being paid for privately by myself and by the Sister Cities Association. The only thing the village is providing is 2 commemorative plaques to give to the fine people of Bochnia to celebrate our 20th anniversary as a sister city and to congratulate the mayor who was just recently elected there. And so excited to get to see our sister city and celebrate the relationships that we forged for 2 decades now and to, just continue to see that relationship flourish. So I know Trustee Domke, that's been a passion project of yours and your family for a number of years. And so excited to be able to carry the flag. First time since Gail, I think, went to initiate it, right? So
It doesn't hurt to have a Pulaski for a last name either, going to Poland,
we pick them at the right
It'll welcome you big time.
So But excited for that. And then finally, I get the honor and privilege. We had a fantastic Rose Parade weekend again. And so I know we had a lot of organizations and people help make that special. And so want to thank staff for their time and efforts to pull all of that together. It's not an easy task, but also we had some great entries. And so it's our third year awarding the Roselle Parade Mayor's Cup. And so I'd like to first invite up Anthony Delgado State Farm Agency, who is our business winner, and then we'll have Roselle Arts and Cultures, our nonprofit winner, out following. So come on up. And if you want to say it a little bit in the microphone for everyone at home.
Yeah, I'm Anthony DeGrado State Farm, born and raised in Roselle. Happy to be a part. Couldn't be happier to get the cup, but I didn't get it on my own here. I had a serious team from the littlest possible person to myself all the way through and through. Great success, and we love the Rose Parade and can't wait for the theme next year. So.
And the rising platform was really impressive. So I'm not a judge, but I was impressed.
Yeah, we really tried to take it to the next tier on that one. So.
My name's Gina Cullen from the Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation. I'm the vice president. Patty, our president, is out of town, and Beth is a family emergency, so they're not here tonight, but they were all part of making our great float. We appreciate Chamber of Commerce, Mayor Plesky, and Roselle, Village of Roselle, for a great parade. And just reminding you that we are selling bricks for our first responders project.
Congratulations again. That's all I have for my report today, so. Any village trustees have a report tonight? Records show none. Village clerk,
No report.
village attorney,
No report.
village administrator.
No report.
We'll move on to unfinished business. We have the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine, procedural, informational, self-explanatory, or non-controversial in nature, and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no discussion on these items unless removed from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda? Let the record show none. Tonight, we have adoption of a resolution approving and authorizing the purchase of equipment from Meridian Rapid Defense Group Sales LLC, and adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a contract by and between the Village of Roselle and John Junior Installations for the Police Department breaker room upgrades in the amount not to exceed $62,655. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
There's, all right, roll call, please.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries. We'll continue on to community development. Trustee Prokowski.
Thank you, Mayor Plesky. I would like to move passage of an ordinance granting a special use for the property commonly known as 810 Nergi, Roselle, Illinois.
Oh, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, could we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Lanisa.
Aye.
And that motion carries.
Moving on to item 9B, I'd like to move passage of an ordinance amending Chapter 4 of the Code of Ordinances of the Village of Roselle, Illinois.
There a second?
Second.
In the absence of our community development manager, could we have the village minister just give a summary of what has changed since the last meeting and where things stand?
Sure. Thank you, David. So before the board tonight is final action on the two ordinances required to make changes to allow chicken keeping in Roselle. The highlights relative from the last meeting discussed relate to kind of the size of the coop. I think there was discussion about the appropriate coop size based on best practices, industry standards. So that maximum is 25 feet, which is 5 square feet per chicken if you have the max of 5, as well as then the run of 60 square feet. So those two items were discussed by the board at the last meeting, as well as putting in here clear prohibition to allowing chickens to be kind of stored inside of the home. I think there was questions about could they be brought into a garage, those type of things. So the language explicitly prohibits them from being located in any part of the home or garage. So those were the major changes. Otherwise, a lot of these other requirements have been kind of consistent throughout your discussion relative to the maximum amount of chickens, as well as no roosters, the registration process. It's a permitting licensing process. Only 20 can be issued total in Roselle. A 12-month period, a rolling kind of 12 months for if there's a number of infractions violating the ordinance, that permit holders could have that permit taken away from them, and that they could no longer have chickens for another year. So those are the highlights. And then the only other thing that is not in the ordinance, because it wasn't very clear from the board on the notification piece, there was discussion by the board of notifying neighbors. That is not in the ordinance because it wasn't clear if the board wanted it in the ordinance or if they did, what that language was intended to do.
And short-term rentals are not currently included in the ordinance as far as
That's
notifications,
a
correct?
practice versus an ordinance language.
So with that being the case, floor is open for debate from the board.
So I guess the only thing out there is a notification of neighbors. Do we want to have them to be notified that the chickens are coming or not? You know, we should at least have a summary or a consensus.
Yep, and if that's something that, we can obviously direct staff to do as we do with short-term rentals to, once approved, notify residents of the approval as well as of the ordinances that dictate it, and also, the means of kind of how to report issues or who they should reach out to with questions. I think, once we align on that too, it's easy if we wanted to, we could have notifications enshrined in ordinances, but not entirely necessary from that standpoint, so. You have a position on the issue, Wayne? As far as notice, I assume I don't want to make any assumptions.
You know, I don't want to keep debating these chicken things, because it's senseless. I just thought, I'm always in concern for the other people that don't have chickens. Are they going to be impacted? I don't want to give them any more power than they would normally have any other time. But I think other villages have put in their ordinance that the neighbors would be notified. And it then maybe takes away 80% of the pent-up hostilities that might occur. It's just more of a proactive than a reactive kind of attitude.
And notice should be before or after approval.
I don't think it would be pending it's not the neighbor's approval. So still the village has the power to approve it.
Okay.
Irrespective of the neighbors. But if you did hear a groundswell of no, just like with the P and Z, sometimes that can make you look over it 4 or 5 times when you should be.
So you're saying before the permit's actually issued and approved?
It would be a process, but again, I wouldn't say that if one neighbor out of 10 says they don't want it, I wouldn't stop that from being allowed. But if there was some reason that 10 people would know, like people came today to make statements about things that were still under our radar, like the golf carts and such, that's good to have that feedback. So I would always elicit feedback from the neighbors when I was putting in something like that.
Okay, even if so I think if it's pending, and we kind of had that conversation last time, it may not get approved. So we'd be notifying them that we're reviewing an application, and would we need to send them another notice afterwards for approval?
I was putting in chickens, okay? I would want to know if 7 of my neighbors were going to really be mad at me, because I don't want to have that kind of attitude. I would preclude having chickens if it meant that I was going to have wars with 7 neighbors. So, and I don't believe that would be what would happen, but I'm just saying that there is a precedence in other villages that they do at least survey the immediate area. whether it's adjacent to the property. I think that might be even more appropriate than going like within a square mile, you know? You're only gonna go with the people next door and next. So, and if I was gonna have chickens, I would even ask my next door neighbors, is it okay? You know, I mean, I care about my neighbors.
Other trustees have an opinion on? Tom?
I'm not in favor of the notifications.
In whole, correct, or?
In whole.
Okay.
This kind of going off what trustee Domke was saying, this feels like it's something that you should do, but I don't necessarily think it's the village's place to make sure that people are being courteous neighbors. There are lots of other
Get
issues.
that. I don't get that. We have that all the time.
It's kind of like a whole situation. If I wanted to put up a fence, my neighbor, by that very fact, then gets a fence. I don't necessarily need to alert them through the village for that. That's something that would technically directly affect them more than even the chickens. So that's why if there was to be anything, I think it would have to be after the permit was approved type of a notification, but
And I think from a staff perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, unless it is the short-term rentals, or a variance request, we don't do any other type of neighborhood notification today by policy.
Yeah, correct. One by state statute, right, variances, but yeah, it's from policy proactively notifying neighbors. I can only think of the short-term rental, which is only to adjoining properties, informing them that that property has been registered for short-term rentals.
Yep, Lee.
I was just gonna say, my recollection of this issue is, I thought we were all aligned on issuing. Cause I remember the last time it was 3-3 to do it after the permit, or sorry, before the permit. And then you had said, yeah, before the permit, but then after we talked about it more, we flipped and we said, actually hearing from, I think Brian made a comment at that meeting about how difficult it was to do. We had at least 4 trustees that said, fine, that's fine. You issued the permit. You have a proactive communication from the village that just says, this is just to alert you. Your neighbors have gotten approval for chicken keeping. That we were gonna send it, I think we were just saying to like the directly adjoining neighbors, so it wouldn't be 10 or 15 people, it would just be like 3 or 4. And then you outline, this is legal in Roselle now. Here are the rules around it. Here's who you call if there's issues. And then we just highlight the fact that like if there's the 3 strikes and you're out kind of thing. I'm pretty sure we talked about all this at that last meeting at the library, so I'm not really sure why this was missed, to be honest with you.
I mean, it was,
You personally.
yeah, no, I mean, I think there was definitely, I think it was towards the end of discussion, so we want to make sure everyone's still aligned with that perspective.
Yeah,
And the
I'm fine with.
word, sorry, said, treat it like short-term rentals. Well, short-term rentals is not in the ordinance. So we just want to make it clear, it's not in the ordinance, the notification, because that's consistent with the short-term rental. And just want to make sure that's consistent with your understanding that it's not in the ordinance.
Be by policy, not by ordinance.
Yeah, I'm okay with it being by policy, because I think the intention for me was really to just socialize it, that this is something that's happening now, so I don't think we necessarily need to go back and update ordinances later. We could kind of make the call to say, hey, how's it been going after, 6-8 months? If we get people that want permits, understand what's going on, and then we could say, okay, this isn't the policy anymore, or yes, it is a good policy, and maybe even get feedback from the neighbors that are notified, like, hey, did you appreciate this? Like, did this help you? Did it alleviate your concerns? And if it does, then I think it's like a good thing to continue.
MP?
That being said, then yes, I would be in favor of kind of as it is written, where it's a policy thing, not necessarily in the ordinance. This makes it easier for us to kind of adjust it. Is it something that's necessary moving forward? But the after the fact notification, I think, is the most appropriate way.
Any other thoughts or conversation?
I understood it as well.
Okay,
I would agree.
Cheryl? Okay. Any other discussion or comments or questions? All right. Can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Prokowski,
Aye.
trustee Trejo,
Hey,
trustee Delapenna,
Aye.
trustee Domke,
I would like to make a statement. I see that the village has vetted the ordinance proposal into its final version. I appreciate that effort. I will, however, under the ideals of this ordinance, is not in the interest of many residents, their property, or their right and expectations to a clean and peaceful environment. So I will regrettably vote no to this ordinance.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
And 4-2, that motion carries. All right, perfect.
Okay, moving on to item 9C, I'd like to move passage of an ordinance amending section 2 of the zoning ordinance of the Village of Roselle, Illinois.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
No,
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa. Aye. Trustee Trejo.
Nay.
That motion carries.
And that is all I have, Mayor Plesky.
Move on to administration, trustee Donkey.
this is Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the intergovernmental agreement and between the Village of Roselle and the Roselle Public Library District.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have one question.
Yeah, absolutely.
How, does anyone know if, let me see if I can ask it the right. I'm in agreement with this proposal. However, I need to know how much are the Main Street merchants benefiting from the lot usage? And I didn't go over there. I was gonna go over there. I should have. Is it well, signage, well enough for people to understand that they can park there in the evenings when they frequent the downtown? You know, Tom, or?
I'll defer to our police chief and deputy police chief to anecdotally from your perspective, or as you kind of driven around, you guys are usually eyes and ears on the street, right? What's it feel like to you guys? And maybe that's something we can follow up and have the patrols kind of let us know. But I feel like I see cars there at night, but you guys are literally out 24/7, 7 days a week, so. What, from your street level perspective, we've been doing this agreement for how long, Jason? I'll buy you some time.
Third year.
Third year, so for 3 years now, we've had this agreement in place. After 8 PM, do you see a lot of cars in that parking lot, or is it pretty vacant? Okay.
Well, David, the part of it could be that they just don't know, you know?
I mean, we have put a number of signs up to advertise it. I think that that's always something to continue to promote. And I think that was something that is nice about passing this every so many years, is that it's a good advertisement that yes, you can park at the library lot after 8 PM through 2 AM. So that way people can utilize it. I think one thing that's always, and I'm going to embodies or in our comprehensive plan consultant, but people don't like to walk in the suburbs usually. And so I think it's about breaking that cultural standard, and that just because you can't park right in front of the business doesn't mean that there isn't parking. Sometimes you need to walk a little bit, and that is well within the 5-minute walking range. So, but great question. Tom P.
Also, just a little bit of the background. Part of the reason why this came up initially from the library's perspective was because there were people already parking there, not necessarily in large amounts of numbers, but this kind of then also gave the village a bit more say in what was happening and kind of regulating that, rather than the library kind of having to somehow regulate its own parking lot. If I remember that correctly, that was part of the discussion from the library's perspective as to why this came about.
Any other questions or comments? We have a roll call then.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Burkowski.
Aye.
Motion carries. We have nothing under fire or police tonight, but Public Works, trustee Trejo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution granting R.W. Dunteman Company approval to perform work on the Rodenberg Road improvements outside of the village's normal working hours based on weather conditions.
Second.
Any discussion? And I think this is a great effort by us just to try to make sure that this project gets done as soon as humanly possible, because we know it's a disruption to everyone's life and traffic patterns, but also being realistic that summer comes with hotter weather and that can disrupt the workflow. So appreciate the board's consideration on this request. Yeah, Lee.
The only thing I would say is it'd be nice to do this maybe more proactively. Like if we know that we have a big project, like maybe just engage the contractors or just kind of proactively just say, hey, let's adjust this for the season, just so they didn't have to wait in case there were days that happened to hit the 90 degrees.
Yep, absolutely. We can make a note of that. Any other discussion? We have a roll call, please.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
That motion carries. We'll move on to finance. Trustee Forsythe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move approval of the accounts payable list for June 10th, 2024 in the amount of $1,546,784.02.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Trustee Forsythe.
Aye.
Trustee Prokowski.
Aye.
Trustee Delapenna.
Aye.
Trustee Domke.
Aye.
Trustee Lanisa.
Aye.
Trustee Trejo.
Aye.
That motion carries. That concludes unfinished business. We'll move to new business items, which are for discussion and debate to give, provide direction to staff before voting in a future meeting. The first one that we have is to provide direction on a memorandum of understanding with Roselle Arts and Culture Foundation. So I'll invite up Village Administrator Belowski to give a summary.
Thank you. Before the board is a memorandum of understanding. We've done similar ones with the Sister Cities organization as an example. It just kind of outlines the roles and responsibilities between the two parties of the village and the Arts and Culture Foundation. We do make a financial contribution to them annually through the budget process. So that was really the impetus of this, was just to put some sort of clarity around how that money is supposed to be used. And then just also to kind of confirm our kind of ongoing working relationship and how we kind of co-brand some items. We work on some fundraising efforts. Currently we're working on the first responders mural. They're help fundraising for that. So that was kind of the why behind doing this, just to put a little structure and formality to our relationship. And with that, I will answer any questions, or if the mayor has anything additional to say.
All add is it's been reviewed by the Arts and Culture Foundation, so they've been a part of a collaborative kind of editing process as well. So any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Domke?
Of course I do.
That's fine.
So yes, the Sister Cities did get September 24th of 2018. We've got a MOU, we call that, memorandum of understanding, very similar to what you have here, very similar, with the exception of the money, which was a different issue. I just want to ask you a couple of questions because it needs to be asked. This is an agreement between us and another entity. So is there a charter of the RACF that you will have on file or with this memorandum of understanding, so you know what their DNA is all about, even though we know them?
Yeah, I don't currently have that. If that's something the board wants, I can certainly ask them.
It should be
for that.
part of a 501c3 with your,
Yeah, we can certainly ask for that to be on file.
can I ask a few more, David? Or
Absolutely.
Yes,
No,
correct.
unless there's anyone else have questions? Floor is yours.
we're not making a commission. I get that, correct? This is not a
Correct.
commission.
This is only just because of the relationship that we have with them and the collaboration. We think it's important just to establish everyone's responsibility and the risk that they each take on.
They're independent of the village. They operate independently, so it's not a commission under the direction of the board or anything like that.
Yeah, I do know the people on the board, on the RACF, they're all quality people and everything, that the organizations run very well. They've done some really nice projects for Roselle. This question is not based on their identity. It's just a question in general about a partnership. Does the board have any responsibility or right to vote about the art projects and their subjects that we might be funding? Should we have that or should we not have that? They're doing artwork. The Sister Cities doesn't do anything like that.
So
A little different.
yeah, I mean, they still have to get, if it's going to be public art on public property, they have to get permission. So I think if it's going to be artwork that's on our property, we would absolutely have the ability to have a say in that. Now, they have done projects for other entities that we have no control over. The big thing here is our money that's provided to them is to host the Rose Ambassador Scholarship. So I think the big thing there is we're just through the committee that used to, or commission that used to do that, now merging into this organization, it provides us some more clarity and kind of what we've done with the Taste Roselle, with the Lions Club and with the sister cities, just make sure that they're separate entities and not the village running these types of things. And so I think this is more so financially, if they would like to have the village's participation in our project, they'd probably seek us out. But this doesn't give them explicit permission just to do anything on our property. But they could partner with the park district or a school district or even a private property owner if they so choose to erect something. As long as it's within our zoning ordinances, I'd say.
Yeah, and if like the mural, we're a financial contributor to that. We sought out a grant for that, so we were, our permission was needed in order for that project to happen.
Yeah, I just, art can take a devious detour sometimes, but in this case, I don't see it happening. So
I would also just say, I understand your perspective on where you're going with this, but I would say, and unless correct me if I'm wrong, but there's been a lot of Supreme Court rulings around signs and intent and freedom of speech. And so I would argue we probably have very limited authority, even if we didn't like the subject of art, to say no or restrict it because of Supreme Court rulings on this very matter.
This is somewhat different, so, but I would agree with you as it pertains to signage and freedom of speech and other issues.
yeah, but we are a part of that, so we should at least say, hey, that's not Roselle.
Yep.
But anyway, that ended my last question.
Okay.
I don't have to ask it.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Their consensus to move forward with the language as proposed with?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you so much.
To have that charter though, just so we have that in our records.
Absolutely. We can accommodate that. Our final one for tonight under new business is to continue our discussion on home rule revenue, options. I'll have our finance director join us up now, Tom Dahl.
In the AV ready.
Maybe.
I always get scared when they move that thing around like that.
Why we have insurance, Wayne.
The Duns came and mentioned something about home rule, and now we're talking about home rule. We're finishing it up.
And I will say one thing that's being added to our agenda, if anyone looks at those agenda items at the bottom, there's a section that says implications. It usually asks questions like, is this a budgeted item, estimated costs, any other implications to be considered? The strategic priority that items are under from a board priority perspective, we are adding in the next month or so does this utilize home rule authority? So that way for residents' sake, you can more easily identify, is this a home rule issue? Is this just a quote unquote normal issue from a board perspective? We do have a lot of authority intrinsically, but I think that should hopefully make it clear when we are using that extra authority or not. But with that being the case, I think I've given you enough time to.
Thank you. So good evening. We're just continuing the discussion from the last meeting. Of course, we presented all the data information and heard your direction. We just wanted to summarize that and give a few dates and then just make sure that we're all on the same page. So starting with the home rule sales tax, and in the packet, there's a home rule, there's a revenue fact sheet for your reference as well. But just a reminder, the home rule sales tax, the village receives 1% from the state. And then the two options were 1.25% of home rule sales tax, which could generate $4 million estimated per year. And then the 1.5% could generate 4.8 million.
That difference is because there's different criteria for what is taxable under the current state sales tax and the home rule sales.
Correct. Interesting that I believe it was Trustee Domke asked the question if other communities were increasing their sales tax. There were two. Of course, they become effective January 1st and July 1st. July 1st, Addison raised theirs 0.25%, and Woodridge increased theirs by 0.5%. Woodridge, the reason for their increase was to supplement their general fund, but Addison specifically was to pay for wastewater infrastructure, their IEPA loans. So they're doing, to your point, a similar thing, implementing sales tax in order to pay for these wastewater projects. So the village board recommendation at the last meeting was increasing the sales tax to 1.5%, or adding the home rule sales tax of 1.5%. The changes would take effect on 1/1 of 2025, and of course, we would not see that first deposit till April. So there's a 3-month lag, so it would take us a while to get some data. Of course, to pay for wastewater capital projects, the IEPA loan starting in 2028, but before that, we kind of generated, we'd be using 1.5 for the Water Sewer Capital Projects Fund, 1.5 million. The remainder of that sales tax could be used for various capital improvements, including enhancing the street improvement program, stormwater improvements, and then some of our streetscaping projects or other capital as we move down. Moving on to natural gas tax. Non-home rule communities can charge based on gross receipts, as we mentioned before. The village board recommendation was to pass a 5 cents per therm use tax on natural gas purchased from an alternate supplier. The per therm rate of 5 cents for those third-party suppliers would bring in an additional $100,000 estimated of new revenue from properties that are not currently paying a tax. We're also presenting an option, which we discussed at the last meeting, which is a switch to a per therm rate for all usage in the village. So this would be, everybody would pay a per therm rate instead of some paying the gross receipts, some paying the per therm. So that per therm rate of 4.5 cents for all usage in the village could bring a more stable $587,000 based on the last 3-year average. Which would be 494,000 from those who are paying the tax currently, and then 93,000 from those that are paying alternate suppliers. And the table that I present there kind of shows, and it was one of the questions, if we did do a per therm rate, making sure that we're making sure that the people that are paying the gross receipts tax now are not paying more. And then that came out to be that 4.5 cents per therm, which would, especially during the last 3 years as shown in the chart, they would not be paying any more on average than they would be with the gross receipts.
Let's pause here since I know this is a little bit new information. Trustee Domke.
Just want to ask a question. I have Northern Illinois Gas. So the first thing you presented is not going to increase my taxes on my gas. It's only for people who are getting it from some other source, right? Okay, so now I'm still in iGas and I'm paying per therm, right? Is my paying per therm going to go up for me?
That's what this chart is showing. It should not. There may be some years where you pay more, but then there would be some years where you would pay less.
And I think the tricky part is with it being a percent, like right now, you would be paying 5% per gross receipt. The people who are buying it from another provider that we can't tax, they have to be taxed per therm, to my knowledge.
That's
So
correct.
they would be taxed in one way, you're being taxed a different way. Now, the 5%, as we
Okay,
saw,
same.
2022, well, we're not taxed the same, you're taxed differently. So you're 5%, they're 5 cents per therm. Now, 5% changes, and I think we saw in 2022 that gas prices went astronomically higher. So in those years, you were paying an effectively higher rate, but other years it could be lower. And I think we've seen the natural gas markets very volatile. So I think percent it's hard to
The
say.
intent is not to give me a higher per therm. That comes from the sourcing and the availability of the gas and the cost going out to everybody. I get that, but we as a village are not trying to increase the rates of the people with NI gas.
The only intent of per therm is to make it consistent and predictable. So
Sure.
that way, if you use a therm, then you're taxed the 4.5 cents versus a percent of a price. We have no input on what's being said. And so I think based on the feedback from the board, obviously we heard that it was to stay with the status quo, but I think there was some questions about, well, if the numbers were different, maybe I would consider the per therm. So I asked staff to go back and say, let's look at this and average it out to make this a little bit flatter. And so that's what this kind of result provides, just because I think that's an important thing for us, because these numbers can be adjusted just for us to make sure that we have more options on the table for us to consider from that side of things.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is just an option for the board to consider.
Is there any, I know this is, I will circle back to it, but is there any initial thoughts on seeing it reduced the 5 pence of a cent?
Tom, can I just ask a question about that 93,000 versus on the slide in front of it when it was $100,000 by, I mean, was you just rounding?
Yeah, just rounding. It's just
Well, I guess the difference is 1.5 cents per therm equals 93,000 and 5 cents per therm equals 100,000. So it's roughly $7,000 difference for that half of a cent difference. If you were to use 4.5 cents for all people, or just use 5
Cents for
cents per therm for the third-party suppliers only. It's my understanding all people receive billing from NICOR. So whether you have a third-party supplier, NICOR is still distribution, you still pay NICOR your bill. It's just whether or not the supply of the gas on that bill is taxed. Much like ComEd, you can get third-party electricity, but ComEd handles the billing because they still get their distribution cost of your bill. So.
Any other questions or comments before we move on? Lee?
I think one thing that would make me feel more comfortable with the 4.5 cents, because right now it's only 3 years here and you have 1 year that has a lot higher prices, which is the 2022. Maybe seeing a little bit more historical data from utility tax, because right now it's still a net increase on the people that have NICOR now because of that anomaly with the 637. So it'd be good to see maybe 3 more years before finalizing the decision. But in theory, if we keep the NICOR people relatively flat to their current taxation, I'm okay with switching to a per therm, but I would like to see that data before the final call.
Tom P?
I'm actually good with this. Going off of Trustee Trejo, though, I'm kind of curious. Would any data prior to 2020 really be relevant? How much did that affect things? And also just kind of going back, kind of 3 years is often kind of considered the recent. So I'm just kind of curious if 2020 would even be relevant, because we had the 1 year that was very low, we had the 1 year that was very high, and then we had the 1 year that was actually kind of right in line with what we would kind of be setting. So I'd be comfortable with the 4.5 cents.
Lee?
I don't remember offhand what it was, but I mean, oil prices were zero. They were negative in 2020. So I mean, that's the whole point of looking a little bit more historically, just to kind of see what that level of gross receipts tax would generate and just to kind of see what it looks like over time.
I'd hope we're not planning another pandemic though.
Oh,
So I don't want to plan off a pandemic.
That's what I'm saying. I want to see in 2020, natural gas might have been expensive. That's what I'm saying. I don't know what it looks like. So it'd be just helpful data point. If 2020 looks like 2021, then it's okay, it makes sense.
We can obviously, I think we have that information, so we can provide that, so.
Yep.
All right, we can continue on.
And then just one point, for example, if we were to come back with this ordinance at the next meeting, it would be implemented for August billing, so as of 8/1. So we have about 30 days with NICOR between the time that the ordinance is passed and then implementation. Moving on to motor fuel tax. The village board recommendation at the last meeting was 2 cents per gallon, which is consistent with neighboring communities. And I believe that's in your packet, and estimated to generate about $200,000 annually for the street improvement program. Our staff recommendation would be to make that tax effective September 1st of 2024, to allow adequate time for notifying the gas station operators and making sure that they can file online and all that, which we've set up with the village, but just making sure everybody's aware of the tax.
Questions or comments from the board?
much street do we get for 200,000?
Well, now
Oh, Kristen?
twice as much as we got before, because we were spending 100,000.
It varies depending on the bidding environment
Oh, that is very true, yes.
As of
and commodity prices.
But plus it'd be a million plus 200,000 for the.
Well, and I think the key thing is, it would not be, this would not fully, like, using some of the sales tax revenue and other revenue streams would go in addition to the 200,000 towards the streets program, to your point. But I know this year our budget was just like, it was just a little bit over $1 million, and that got us 1.63 or 1.7 miles of street.
Something, this is about right, yeah.
So I'm gonna say somewhere between 0.1 and 0.2 miles of streets.
We could get 2 miles this year instead of 1.7.
Sure, if we
Theory,
round up.
yes.
Come on, take some chances.
Depending on the bid.
It gets us closer to the 2 million per year. And then the food and beverage tax. The village board recommendation was to replace the existing eating establishment tax with a food and beverage tax, which is same as the eating establishment tax, but now it expands to include packaged alcohol sold at gas stations and liquor stores. And then also takes into account restaurants that don't have seating, that are not currently paying the eating establishment tax. They would now be subject to that. It's estimated to receive an additional $60,000 in revenue to the general fund. And this additional revenue could be used to offset revenue from vehicle stickers. And again, much like the gasoline tax, the staff recommendation is to make this tax effective September 1st, 2024, to allow time for notifying the impacted businesses.
And Tom, I know you said this with the gas tax, but if these were to be made effective September 1st, given these are locally collected, when would we have the first month to read the results?
It would be October 20th would be the deadline for payment. So the November treasurer's report, you'd see that data.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the
Or,
board?
I'm sorry, the October treasurer's report in November.
Got it. Thank you. Trustee Donkey?
If we try to capture the sale of food sold and eaten elsewhere, do we realize that small businesses are impacted locally? Happy by Chocolate, Cheese Candy Corner, they're gonna now be paying a tax because they sell goods and they're not eating on site, but they're eating elsewhere, which is part of the wording of our thing here, elsewhere. So how do we hammer the mom and pop stores?
Well, two things. One, it's the consumer that is paying the tax. So they charge the,
Sales tax on the businesses?
it's not on the businesses, no.
What's the people?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The consumer, when you pay that, so if you spend $10, it'll be,
Well, in a way, it does impact the business though, because their price of product goes up.
no, because their product doesn't change. So it's just the tax is added at the time of purchase. So if I go to Happy by Chocolate, which is very delicious, I would pay a tax. I, as a consumer, would pay the tax. They have to set that aside and pay the village by the
So
20th of the
they have-
following month.
They have to raise the price of their product, possibly.
No, they would not.
Doesn't impact their,
The consumer
doesn't-
paying more
doesn't im-
for goods because
No.
the taxes are higher, but their prices are higher.
Consumer pays.
So the consumer's giving an extra 2 cents and they put it in another drawer. and
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
But Tom, I think there's also the definition of what food would be subject to the tax. And at least as we've been discussing, as we've seen some other ordinances, that product would not, we would recommend as staff, that would not be subject to the tax. That is not prepared food. By definition, prepared food is your restaurant. It's not candy out of a convenience store. It's not prepackaged, manufacturer packaged food. And that's by definition, you could exclude, and I've seen in some ordinances, make it clear, a candy store is not like a restaurant.
Good if we have that.
So that would be our intent, would be to bring back a draft ordinance that provides that clarity, because we know through our current ordinance, some things have come up and we'd like to provide some clarity to that to help administer it. But that was at least our intent, was your example, the chocolate would not be subject to the prepared food definition. It would not fit that.
These corner candy,
Right.
They just
Yep.
started out, you know.
That's,
Yeah, that was gonna be my second point was that, if it's sealed, it's not prepared on site and it's not.
Good example might be hypothetically, if a business that makes chocolate decided to sell and prepare hot chocolate on site, that would be subject to this. But if they had just sold the preparation materials for a hot chocolate, that would not.
Correct.
and the stores within stores, if they sold food for consumption on site, the food they sold for consumption would be subject to the tax. But other food they sell around it, if it's manufactured and original, would not be subject to the tax. Because we know kind of businesses within businesses are a thing now, so we'd want to be very clear with the definition. If that's what the board wants, that's what we'll bring back to make pretty clear.
Because it would be.
Absolutely perfect. That's perfect. Could I ask one more quickie?
Absolutely. You can ask as many questions as you want. That's what this time's for.
I know, and I don't want to just kind of, okay, would the Taste of Roselle, would they have to be paying that tax too? I don't know how that would work.
Well,
have like-
Taste of Roselle,
Whatever.
no, because they don't sell anything. But I do think we want clarification from the board that food trucks sell prepared food. And I think that's one of those gray areas we have right now in our ordinance. That with home rule, I think we would like to be explicitly clear that food trucks do pay the prepared food
And
tax.
the vendors that are at Taste, are they considered like a food truck then when they're there?
Yeah, I mean, I think by definition, like for instance, I think it's Schaumburg's ordinance explicitly states, their special events, all vendors at these events, that are considered sellers of prepared food.
I have a lot of respect for food trucks. There's some fantastic ones. We have some that are locally owned, but I think that puts our restaurants at a competitive disadvantage if they're not all on the same playing field. So I think that just my personal 2 cents on that one. But other thoughts or questions from the board? Mr. Trejo?
Yeah, I'm still in favor of what we talked about or at least what I wanted last time of cutting it back down to 1% and broadening it out. But I do agree that we should get clarity in the ordinance and kind of make sure that we have the food trucks and that kind of thing in there to really articulate who's subject to the tax.
Well, I think if I understand, there goes my pen cap. If I understand correctly, we'd have a read by November. So I think we could take the first step to your point of expanding this, and before a sales tax would go into effect, we could get a read at least. What is the impact of that? So we can better forecast about decreasing the tax overall if we wanted to. Other questions or comments?
And just one more item. One more. So vehicle stickers, I always save the best for last.
Tell me about it, Tom.
So last year, as I mentioned, we provided $574,000 to the general fund. So we need to replace that. The resolution that you passed last year was to evaluate the elimination of vehicle stickers by the end of 2025 without negatively impacting the general fund. Staff is prepared to present its evaluation during the budget process for 2025. So to provide options for eliminating vehicle stickers. So we just wanted to reiterate that we will be working on that during the budget process and taking in all these things that we're summarizing tonight.
200,000 from the gas tax is not like a lot, but that's almost half your vehicle sticker revenue, right? So it gets us different fund, but it gets us closer and closer to finding ways that we can make up that total amount to eventually, hopefully, someday, sooner than later, get rid of it. Mr. Domke?
I have one other question. If
It's open, so if there's any vehicle sticker questions or any questions in general about the presentation, floor is open for the discussion. This is just, again, I think we want to summarize, it was a dense topic and we had a lot going on, so we wanted to bring it back, make sure staff understood correctly, and we also didn't have the dates tied to these things, so now you understand when it could go into effect, when we'd have a read on it, so that way we can make policy decisions on that, so. But Mr. Domke, you've
not
got.
on the agenda, but this grocery tax that the state is going to take away.
Yes.
What are we going to do? Do we have to even, we don't have to.
So I guess the key thing about the grocery tax is as it was approved through the budget process would go away and be sunsetted for 2026. So we have some time. It doesn't go away immediately. One thing that the state did give is whether you're home rule or not, which in this case we are now, we have the right to reinstitute a grocery tax from a municipal level. So we can institute that up to one, really, whatever level we would like to. So with that being the case, we don't have to make that policy decision today. Tom, from your visibility, what does the grocery tax for Roselle mean? Because it's not just, I think it's very misconceiving. It's not just grocery stores, which we do have one on Lake Street. But also it'd be on certain goods that are sold through convenience stores and other locations. So it's not just necessarily grocery stores, it's anyone that sells kind of packaged foods.
Right, and online too.
And online.
Right, so if you're,
You delivery.
Online too.
yeah, so if you shop,
Yeah.
get some of your stuff from Amazon or Target or wherever, that's the low tax. So yeah, it's anything from there, and I believe it was $230,000, the impact, if I remember correctly, based on the calculations that we have. So, you know, that'll be a discussion to be had probably the middle of next year, on what the board would like to do.
And regionally, I will say, as every community weighs it, every community is gonna have a different decision that fits their needs. What is being discussed in the broader context is that every municipality should kind of pick a month to institute this, so that way it's more clear to the public, kind of the reason why communities are making this decision or not. And so there'll be some discussion over the next year across other communities about how that might happen.
Thank you.
Good question. Other questions or comments?
We got everything correct that we,
So I know we've got some homework to do, so my notes, unless there's other comments that come up, we have some homework to do on the therms still to kind of bring that forward and have some additional historical analysis provided, and we'll do that in the next board report, hopefully for this week if possible. And if we could get some additional direction on that piece of it, I think what we can do is have two things teed up and ready to go for a board action there, where we can just do the 5 cent per therm per third party, or we could have the alternative option. And then, besides that, I think it's just continue to provide more additional language in the food and beverage in regards to exclusions to that, or making that very clear, as well as food trucks or other special events in town that may provide outside vendors a chance to sell within the village and may or may not be encompassed in that. Those are the two things that I had as homework items for staff to bring back to the board. Is there other things that I missed from that perspective, or other things that the board wanted to discuss on this matter?
we'll start bringing ordinances forward.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I want to thank again trustee Lanisa, trustee Forsythe. Thank you for the additional work you guys did to set us up for having a productive conversation on this. I know we ask a lot of all of our trustees, but I know this was a very meaty topic, so I appreciate you both meeting with staff on this. So, with that being the case, we do have a second opportunity for village board public comment. Is there any member of the public that wishes to address the board at this time? Yeah, you just don't mind coming up, state your name for the record into the microphone for our friends at home. So can you do it from my phone? Because otherwise the people at home won't be able to hear you. Or in 2 months from now, when they want to hear
A million.
passionate question.
There you go.
Millions out there.
My question is about the natural gas tax, and
Yeah.
I'm concerned because I do have Nicor, but I also have Santana. Santana gives me the gas. Nicor charges me to distribute.
Mhm.
Okay. So it sounds to me like your proposal is for the people who are smart and wanted to save some money, and they got their gas, even though it's distributed by Nicor, but they got it from another company. You're gonna kind of be taking that away because you're gonna be charging them a little bit more tax. Is that correct? Is that my understanding?
So I don't know about your specific situation because of your vendor, because some vendors are taxed, some are not. But essentially, if you're using a third party vendor under certain rules, you are paying no taxes today, while everyone else is paying a tax. So what would
I
happen?
was a smart consumer.
That's fine. So this would mean everyone's paying a natural gas tax instead of some people are and some people are not. So.
I know I'm paying taxes somewhere on there, but I think I'll have to come to the next meeting, bring my tax bill with me, and maybe we could discuss it then.
Yeah, because I think it depends. And Tom, I don't know if you can speak to it better than I can at this time, but I think there's specific types of third-party vendors that are able to elude the taxes, and I don't know how to more eloquently put that.
I think it's all third party,
All third-party, okay.
but the grocery receipts, and I'm not sure because I've never used an alternate third party, but we'd have to look at the bill. There could be some charges from Nicor that are subject to it, but it's certainly not the gas that is subject to the tax.
Yeah.
Check that out because if that's going to be the case, then I think that the board has a responsibility to let the residents know this before they pass such an ordinance.
Yep, absolutely. Well, all things are publicly noticed to our community and whatnot, and so we don't do anything in the cloak of darkness, so,
Okay.
but appreciate it.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other public comments at this time? We have other business for discussion only. Wayne?
I will say about the therm thing, that's gonna be a very small addition, but I remember when third parties came at me to try to give me a better deal, they were offering a substantial savings, way above what this therm might increase that cost. So I don't know if that's the case anymore for you. This was many years ago, but it was like, oh my gosh, I gotta switch, but then we didn't. So but anyway, I don't think it's gonna be that much for you, but okay. I don't know that for sure, but it wasn't.
Any other business for discussion only amongst the board? If not, can I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
I'll
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.